I had sat well back on the form, and while seeming to be busy with my sum, had held my slate in such a manner as to conceal my face. I might have escaped notice had not my treacherous slate somehow happened to slip from my hand and, falling with an obtrusive crash, directly draw every eye upon me. I knew it was all over now, and as I stooped to pick up the 2 fragments of slate, I rallied my forces for the worst. It came. "A careless girl," said Mr. Brocklehurst, and immediately after, "It is the new pupil, I perceive." And before I could draw breath, "I must not forget, I have a word to say respecting her." Then aloud, how loud it seemed to me, "Let the child who broke the slate come forward." Miss Temple gently assisted me to his very feet, and I caught her whispered counsel. "Don't be afraid, Jane. I saw it was an accident. You shall not be punished." The kind whisper went to my heart like a dagger. "Fetch that stool," said Mr. Brocklehurst, pointing to a very high one from which a monitor had just risen. It was brought. "Place the child upon it," Mr. Brocklehurst hemmed. "Miss Temple, teachers and children, you all see this girl?" Of course they did, for I felt their eyes directed like burning glasses against my scorched skin. "You see she is yet young. You observe she possesses the ordinary form of childhood. God has graciously given her the shape that he has given to all of us. No signal deformity points her out as a marked character. Who would think that the evil one had already found a servant and an agent in her? Yet such, I grieve to say, is the case." A pause, in which I began to steady the palsy of my nerves and to feel that the Rubicon was passed and that the trial, no longer to be shirked, must be firmly sustained. "My dear children," pursued the black marble clergyman with pathos, "this is a sad, a melancholy occasion, for it becomes my duty to warn you that this girl, who might be one of God's own lambs, is a little castaway, not a member of the true flock, but evidently an interloper and an alien. You must be on guard against her. You must shun her example. If necessary, avoid her company, exclude her from your sports, and shut her out from your converse. This child, a native of a Christian land, worse than many a little heathen who says its prayers to Brahma and kneels before Juggernaut, this girl is a liar." Now came a pause of 10 minutes, during which I, by this time in perfect possession of my wits, observed all the females produce their pocket handkerchiefs and apply them to their optics, while the elderly lady swayed herself to and fro, and the 2 younger ones whispered, "How shocking!" Mr. Brocklehurst resumed. "This I learned from her benefactress, from the pious and charitable lady who adopted her in her orphan state, reared her as her own daughter, and whose kindness, whose generosity the unhappy girl repaid by an ingratitude so bad, so dreadful, that at last her excellent patroness was obliged to separate her from her own young ones, fearful lest her vicious example should contaminate their purity. She has sent her here to be healed, even as the Jews of old sent their diseased to the troubled pool of Bethesda. And teachers, superintendent, I beg of you not to allow the waters to stagnate around her." With this sublime conclusion, Mr. Brocklehurst adjusted the top button of his surtout, let her stand for a half an hour longer on that stool, and let no one speak to her during the remainder of the day. There was I, then, mounted aloft, I, who said I could not bear the shame of standing on my natural feet in the middle of the room, was now exposed to general view on a pedestal of infamy. What my sensations were, no language can describe. But just as they all rose, stifling my breath and constricting my throat, a girl came up and passed me. In passing, she lifted her eyes. What a strange light inspired them. What an extraordinary sensation they ran through me. How the new feeling bore me up. It was as if a martyr, a hero, had passed a slave or victim and imparted strength in the transit. I mastered the rising hysteria, lifted up my head, and took a firm stand on the stool. Helen Burns asked some slight question about her work of Miss Smith, was chidden for the triviality of the inquiry, returned to her place, and smiled at me as she again went by. What a smile! I remember it now, and I know that it was the effluence of fine intellect, of true courage. It lit up her marked lineaments, her thin face, her sunken gray eye, like the reflection from the aspect of an angel. Thank you.